I have some breaking news. Donald Trump's VP pick, JD Vance, made a former professor delete a blog post Vance wrote in 2012 attacking the GOP over its anti-immigrant rhetoric. And we got our hands on this deleted blog post that he doesn't want you to see. And when we read it, you'll notice that it comes in stark contrast to JD Vance's present-day rhetoric about immigrants, where he's spearheading a national campaign to demonize Haitians in Ohio and demonize immigrants in general. I want to break down his blog post, and I also want to break down JD Vance's evolution, or it's more like he devolved over the past decade from somebody who had some moral guiding principles to somebody who now puts on a MAGA hat and doesn't care at all. Do you guys remember this story from NPR that reads, JD Vance is unrecognizable to his former friend who shared their emails and texts. Vance is known these days for being a far-right politician. He's expressed his opposition to marriage equality. He's opposed abortion, including in cases of rape and incest. He's aimed to criminalize gender-affirming care for minors. All of that is in stark contrast to the JD Vance who Nelson knew for more than a decade. The JD Vance who was at Nelson's bedside with homemade baked goods after they went through a gender transition-related surgery, a transgender surgery. The friend who called Donald Trump a racist and a morally reprehensible human being is now by Donald Trump's side, using the same type of bombastic, apocalyptic rhetoric that has plunged America into such a dark political time. A week after President Barack Obama won re-election in November 2012, JD Vance, then a law student at Yale, wrote a scathing rebuke of the Republican Party's stance on migrants and minorities, criticizing it for being, quote, openly hostile to non-whites and for alienating blacks, Latinos, and the youth. And again, JD Vance has turned on the school he went to, Yale. He now says these universities are elitist. You can't trust them. They are too woke. And JD Vance has lost all of his knowledge, or he's grifting his way to power and acts like he doesn't have any of this knowledge, because I guarantee JD Vance from a decade ago or from 12 years ago from this 2012 message would say that immigrants are beneficial to the economy, but listen to him now.
Town. If the path to prosperity was flooding your nation with low-wage immigrants, then Springfield, Ohio would be the most prosperous country and the most prosperous city in the world. America would be the most prosperous country in the world because Kamala Harris has flooded the country with 25 million legal aliens.
He's essentially saying if immigration helped the economy, America would be the most prosperous nation in the world. Number one, we are the most prosperous nation in the world, almost by every measure. And number two, the vast majority of our wealth has been built off of the back of black people that were forced to come here, but also immigrants that came during the Industrial Revolution. JD Vance knows this. He is just pretending. We'll play more clips, but back to this article. 4 years later, after 2012, as Vance considered a career in GOP politics, he asked a former college professor to delete that very article. That professor, Brad Nelson, taught Vance at Ohio State University while Vance was an undergraduate student. So JD Vance's former professor deleted the article for him during the 2016 Republican primaries because he wanted to do him a favor. He wanted to make his life easier and thought he might have an easier time getting a job in Republican politics. However, we got our hands on the article titled A Blueprint for the GOP. Quote, a significant part of the Republican immigration policy centers on the possibility of deporting 12 million people, or self-deporting them, Vance wrote in 2012. Think about it. We conservatives rightly mistrust the government to efficiently administer business loans and regulate our food supply, yet we allegedly believe that it can deport millions of unregistered aliens. The notion fails to pass the laugh test. The same can be said for too much of the party's platform, and this is actually a point I make all the time. Now, JD Vance is making it from a slightly different perspective. He's talking about the efficiency of deporting 12 million people. It's not that he's against it morally. We're against it morally, but we're also pointing out, hey, if you're going to deport 12 million people, where are those resources going to come from? Especially in Springfield, Ohio. If the police force is occupied deporting well-meaning families, then other criminals like Donald Trump will be able to do whatever whatever they want. Also, Donald Trump said it will necessarily be a bloody process deporting these people, so it's just they want violence from the government. So-called conservatives want the government to overstep when they don't trust the government in the first place. JD Vance makes a decent point, and I like how he's actually able to articulate his points. Again, you put on the MAGA hat, you drop 50 IQ points. 12 years later, as former President Donald Trump's running mate, Vance espouses many of the same anti-immigrant postures that he criticized back in 2012 as a 28-year-old law school student. In recent days, Vance has amplified baseless claims against Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. Not only that, but he then doubles down.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to,
but it wasn't just a meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana.
You just said that.
So this dude is creating stories.
You're creating a story.
Public policy.
No, the video didn't pause. That's just a very awkward moment between JD Vance and Dana Bash after she calls him out for saying he creates stories.
Sir, you just said that you're creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not.
He's just such an awkward person all the time. Asked on Sunday about his previous criticism of Trump's immigration policy, Vance argued that Trump's immigration rhetoric was actually the reason he changed from a Trump critic to a supporter. It's so rich the way these people slither their way around facts. Quote, "The reason that I changed my mind on Donald Trump is actually perfectly highlighted by what's going on in Springfield. What's going on in Springfield is a story that JD Vance himself manufactured. Read this tweet. Why we need professional journalists. A JD Vance representative told the Wall Street Journal about Anna Kilgore, a Springfield, Ohio woman whose cat went missing in August. So Chris Marr drove to her house. When she found this lady, Anna Kilgore, she apologized to her neighbors because the cat was in the basement the whole time. This is the lady, Anna Kilgore, with a Trump cap. A Vance spokesperson on Tuesday provided the Wall Street Journal with a police report in which a resident had claimed her pet might have been taken by Haitian neighbors. But when a reporter went to Anna Kilgore's house Tuesday evening, she said her cat, Miss Sassy, which went missing in late August, had actually returned a few days later, found safe in her own basement. Kilgore, wearing a Trump hat and a Trump shirt, said she apologized to her Haitian neighbors with the help of her daughter in a mobile phone translation app. These are the people that are spreading these rumors, or at least sparking these rumors, that JD Vance then spreads on a national level. It is so incredibly irresponsible. Vance's past anti-Trump rhetoric is well known, as he was a vocal critic of the former president during much of Trump's first year in office. And though Vance defended many of his supporters, he wrote on Facebook in 2016, quote, "They are undoubtedly vile racists at the core of Trump's movement." And I am sure that JD Vance came to that conclusion because he listens to the rhetoric of Donald Trump. He listens to the rhetoric of Trump supporters, and he was able to read between the lines. I do still think he is able to. Honestly, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I think JD Vance in 2012, 2014 was probably a good, nice guy, and now he only has shells, remnants of that. He is a shell of a human being because when he goes out in public, he's so awkward. You can see this was probably a nice college frat bro at one point, but he's just lost all of that spark and he's grifting. He is not being himself. If he was being himself, he would be a center-right Nikki Haley conservative, but instead he's been thrusted into this position as Trump's VP. That is just my instinct, and it's backed up by a lot of this evidence. JD Vance used to be a normal guy. Nelson, who spoke highly of Vance in messages with CNN, that's his former professor, calling him one of the brightest students he's taught, said Vance's post had, quote, ruffled some feathers in some campaigns that Vance was thinking of working for. Quote, "I was a bit surprised at the blowback he apparently received from the GOP, as I thought his post was fairly innocuous, but in 2016, we all know what happened. Trump began to wrap the GOP around his finger in a way that we hadn't seen before." Here's JD Vance getting confronted by Kristen Welker on this same issue.
This week on former President Trump's baseless claims about migrants eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, claims you first shared online, Senator, earlier this week. Local authorities now say there have been no credible reports of migrants hurting pets or animals. And in fact, neo-Nazis are now taking credit, frankly, for pushing these rumors mainstream. Why are you continuing to double and triple down on these baseless claims?
Well, two important points here, Kristen. First of all, I have heard firsthand from multiple constituents, people who made 911 calls a month ago, a year ago, who were making these complaints. I trust my constituents more than I do the American media that has shown no interest in what's happened in Springfield until we started sharing cat memes on the internet, which is...
But here's the thing. He trusts his constituents a little bit too much, because this is what ends up happening. He blows up a story based off of somebody whose cat was in the basement the entire time. This article reads, JD Vance offers proof of pet eating, but it's proven false with one simple phone call. Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance, has dug in on his claim Haitians in an Ohio community are abducting and eating pets, even as the state's GOP governor and other officials insist there is no evidence of such behavior. But the salacious claim was easily debunked. It's absolutely hilarious, and I also think that Donald Trump took his lessons that he learned from Roy Cohn, the famous closeted New York lawyer who is a troublemaker and who mentored Donald Trump. He taught Donald Trump never concede, always deflect, attack, lie, attack back, never ever say that you're losing or admit defeat, always double down. And we see that with Donald Trump every time he loses, when he loses an election or a debate or a court case. And I think that he gave JD Vance some guidance in this case. He mentored JD Vance and he said, hey, we should not ever concede that we were wrong. And JD Vance took Trump's advice because it's the dude that he looks up to. And now we have articles like this, calls for JD Vance to resign after he admits that he created pet eating story about immigrants. He did admit that he created the story. We just heard it. Just about every time JD Vance, the most unpopular vice presidential nominee in American history, opens his mouth, he ignites a firestorm of criticism. I say that all the time. Every single time JD Vance opens his mouth or touches a stage or gets in front of a camera, he makes the situation much, much worse. He ignites a firestorm of criticism and likely shaves another point off the Republican presidential's polling numbers. Very true. Quote, if I have to create stories so that the American people actually have to pay attention, I'll do it, said JD Vance. And now people are saying, in the wake of JD Vance admitting he created the pet eating story, and as a result of the very real threats the communities and people he has targeted are now under, I am calling on him to resign, as our senator, said Ohio State Representative Casey Weinstein. An Ohio State representative called for JD Vance to resign as the senator, and I'll leave you with that. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment a blue heart, hit that subscribe button. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.